My wife used to say I had a gift for reading people. 41 years of marriage, and Helen was right about most things. But she wasn't here anymore, and somewhere along the way, I stopped trusting what I could see with my own two eyes. That's the only explanation I have for how things got as bad as they did. My name is Walter Greer. I'm 68 years old. I spent 32 years as a civil engineer for the county of Maricopa, Arizona, designing drainage systems and road extensions that most people drive over every single day without a second thought. Unglamorous work, honest work. I retired in 2019 with a pension, a paid-off house in Scottsdale, and roughly $840,000 sitting in a mix of a 401k and a brokerage account that Helen and I had built together over 4 decades of never spending more than we earned. Helen passed in March of 2021. Pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks from diagnosis to gone. I don't talk about that part much because I still don't have the right words for it, and I'm not sure I ever will. What I can tell you is that grief does something to your judgment. It softens the edges of things you would normally see clearly, and my son Marcus knew exactly how to use that. Marcus is 41. He works in commercial real estate, or he did, on and off, between stretches of what he called pivoting and what I called sitting on the couch watching his portfolio drain. He married a woman named Serena about 9 years ago. Serena is polished the way certain people are polished. The kind of polish that's all surface that you can see your own reflection in but never see through. She smells expensive. She speaks in complete sentences about investment strategies and equity positions. And from almost the first conversation I had with her, something behind my sternum told me to be careful. I didn't listen to that. I told myself it was just an old man being protective of his son. Their daughter, my granddaughter Lily, turned 7 last October. She is the one part of this whole story that stays clean. I need you to know that before I go any further. For the first year after Helen died, Marcus called every Sunday. He drove up from Chandler twice a month. He helped me clean out Helen's things, her clothes, her craft room, the reading chair she'd had since before Marcus was born. I was grateful in the way that you're grateful when you're drowning and someone throws you a rope. You don't stop to think about where the rope is tied. The shift was gradual enough that I almost didn't catch it. Almost. It started with questions. Reasonable questions at first. Had I updated my beneficiary designations since Mom passed? Had I thought about consolidating my accounts, maybe simplifying things? There was a financial advisor Marcus knew, a friend of a friend, who specialized in estate planning for retirees. Would I be open to a conversation? I said, sure, why not? He's my son. The advisor's name was Todd. He wore a Rolex and drove a white Mercedes and gave me a folder full of charts showing how I could optimize my estate by moving a significant portion of my assets into a trust that he managed. The management fee was modest, he said. Industry standard. I took the folder home and put it on the kitchen counter and looked at it for 3 days. Then I called my own accountant, a woman named Pat who'd done my taxes for 15 years. Pat looked at the proposal for about 4 minutes before she said, Walter, this man is not a fiduciary. Walk away. I walked away. I thanked Marcus for the introduction and told him it wasn't the right fit. That's when the tone changed. Not dramatically. Not the way it changes in movies where someone slams a door or raises their voice. It changed the way weather changes in the desert. A shift in pressure you feel in your joints before you see it in the sky. Marcus started calling less. When he did call, the conversations had an agenda to them, a destination they were always trying to reach. The house came up a lot. The Scottsdale house, which Helen and I bought in 1997 for $218,000 and which was now worth somewhere north of $650,000. Did I really need 4 bedrooms? Had I thought about downsizing? There were some nice communities nearby, active adult communities, very comfortable. Had I looked into those? I told him I was comfortable where I was. Then Serena started calling. That was new. Serena never called. She appeared at holidays and birthdays with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but she didn't call. Now she was calling on Tuesday afternoons with a warmth in her voice that felt like something she'd practiced. She asked about my health. She mentioned, casually, that they'd been having some financial stress. The market had been rough. Marcus's deal in Tempe had fallen through. She mentioned Lily, how quickly kids' activities added up, gymnastics and school supplies, and the cost of everything these days. I listened. I said I was sorry to hear things were tough. I did not offer money. The calls continued. In September of last year, Marcus drove up on a Saturday morning without calling first. He brought Lily, which I appreciated, and we had breakfast together, scrambled eggs and the sourdough toast I keep because Helen liked it and I can't seem to stop buying it. After Lily went out to the backyard to look for the roadrunner that sometimes comes through the wash, Marcus set his coffee down and looked at me the way he used to look at me when he was 16 and needed something he knew I wouldn't want to give him. "Dad," he said, "I need to talk to you about the house." I waited. He'd spoken with an estate attorney, he said. Just exploratory, no pressure. But there was a way to transfer the house into a family trust now, which would avoid probate, reduce estate taxes, simplify everything for when the time came. He slid a folder across the table. I noticed it had the same font as Todd's folder from 2 years earlier. "Marcus," I said, "who paid for this consultation?" He said he did, as a gift, because he was thinking about my future. I picked up the folder. I looked at the first page. Then I set it back down. "I'll have Pat look at it," I said. The muscle in his jaw moved. "Dad, Pat is a tax accountant." "I'll have Pat look at it," I said. The muscle in his jaw moved. "Dad, Pat is a tax accountant. This is estate law. These are different things." "Then I'll have an estate attorney look at it." He left an hour later. The folder stayed on the table. I put it in the recycling bin that evening without reading the rest of it. What I did do was call my own attorney, a woman named Beverly, who a colleague from the county had recommended years ago and who I'd used for some contract work after retirement. I told her what had been happening. The advisor, the folders, the conversations about the house. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Walter, I'd like you to come in. Bring all of it." I went in the following Thursday. Beverly and I spent 2 hours going through everything. My current estate documents, the will Helen and I had made in 2014, the beneficiary designations on my retirement accounts. By the end of it, we had a plan. A real one. I left her office with a list of things to do and a feeling in my chest I hadn't felt in 2 years. Solid. Like load-bearing concrete. What happened next? I didn't plan. I want to be honest about that. I didn't go into Thanksgiving with any intention of what ended up happening. I was simply prepared. Marcus and Serena came up the Wednesday before with Lily. My daughter-in-law from Helen's side, my sister-in-law Patricia, drove in from Tucson. We had the kind of Thanksgiving that looks fine in photographs. The table set the way Helen used to set it. The turkey from the same butcher in Arcadia. The green bean casserole that nobody actually loves but everyone expects. Lily fell asleep on the couch by 7 o'clock, one of Helen's old quilts pulled up around her, and I sat there for a moment just watching her breathe. I should have felt peaceful. I would have, once, after Patricia went to bed and Lily was moved to the guest room. The three of us sat in the living room, with the remainder of a bottle of Malbec that nobody was really enjoying. Serena was on her phone. Marcus was looking at me with that look again, the 16-year-old look. And I knew what was coming before he opened his mouth. "Dad, we need to move forward on this." I looked at him. "On what, Marcus?" "You know what. The house. The trust. We've been patient." Serena set her phone face down on the cushion beside her. She was listening now. "We've been more than patient," she said, and her voice had lost its Tuesday afternoon warmth entirely. "Your accountant has been obstructing this for 2 years. She's not an estate attorney. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and frankly, she has a vested interest in keeping your assets disorganized because it means more work for her." I looked at my daughter-in-law. I felt very calm. That surprised me. "Pat has been doing my taxes for 15 years, I said. "She's never overcharged me once." "Dad," Marcus leaned forward. "We're not trying to take anything from you. We're trying to protect the family's future. Lily's future. Your grandchild, is that not important to you?" There it was. I'd been waiting for Lily's name to arrive in this conversation, and there it was. "Lily's future is very important to me," I said. Then let us help you. You want me to transfer the house into a trust that you control, that we manage together, that you control, I said again, quietly, and move a portion of my retirement accounts into a vehicle that you and Serena have structured. That's what the folder says. Serena stood up. She is not a tall woman, but she has a way of filling space when she's angry that I suspect she learned somewhere intentionally. We have been planning our lives around this, Walter. Marcus turned down a position in Denver 2 years ago because we assumed, because you implied, that we would be settled here, that this family's assets would be handled properly. That you were going to be reasonable about this, Serena. I said her name the way you say a word when you wanted to stop a sentence. It worked. The room was quiet. Marcus said, very low, Dad, we need you to do this. I looked at my son. I thought about the boy he used to be, 11 years old, sitting in this same house doing homework at the kitchen table, asking me questions about how bridges stayed up, actually interested in the answer. I thought about how much I had loved that boy. I thought about how much I still loved him, in the complicated way you love someone who is disappointing you. I know you need me to, I said. That's what concerns me. Marcus stood up then. He wasn't loud, but his voice had an edge to it I hadn't heard before, not directed at me, and it made something in my stomach go cold. He said things about ingratitude, about how much he'd sacrificed, about how I was sitting on assets that were doing nothing while his family struggled. He said that I was choosing an accountant's opinion over my own son. He said, and this is the part I keep returning to, the part I haven't been able to put down since. He said, you're 68 years old, Dad. You don't need all of this. You need to start being realistic about what comes next. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan. Marcus stopped talking. Serena's eyes went to my hand. I set my phone on the coffee table between us, screen up. I pressed stop on the voice memo app. The red waveform went flat. Neither of them said anything. I've been advised, I said, not to have this conversation again without a record of it. I picked the phone back up and slid it back into my pocket. Beverly, my estate attorney, suggested it after I described the last several conversations to her. Marcus sat back down. Slowly. I want to tell you both something, I said, and I want you to hear it clearly. I was not angry. I want to be accurate about that. I was not performing calmness either. I was simply on the other side of something, looking back at it. I updated my estate documents 6 weeks ago. The house is in a revocable trust. My trust, administered by Beverly's firm after I pass. My retirement accounts have been redistributed. A portion will go to Lily directly in a custodial account she can access at 25. The remainder goes to 3 organizations. The Arizona chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, a scholarship fund at the engineering school at Arizona State, and a veterans housing nonprofit in Phoenix that Helen volunteered with for 6 years. Serena made a sound that wasn't quite a word. You're both named in my will, I continued. You will receive something. It's not what you've been planning for, and I understand that's going to require some adjustment. I paused. The position in Denver, if that's still available, or if something like it comes up, I think Marcus should seriously consider it. You're both capable people. You don't need my house to build a good life. You've just convinced yourselves that you do. Marcus looked at me for a long time. His face went through several things I couldn't fully name. Then he said, Who told you to do all of this? I did, I said. I'm 68, Marcus, not dead. They left the next morning, early, before Lily was awake. I heard the car back out of the driveway at 6:43. I was already up, standing at the kitchen window with my coffee, watching the sun come over the McDowell Mountains, the way I've watched it come up from this window since 1997. Patricia found me there when she came down at 7:30. She poured herself a cup and stood next to me and didn't say anything for a few minutes, which is why I've always liked Patricia. How are you? She finally asked. I'm okay, I said. And then, because it was Patricia, I'm sad, but I'm okay, I said. And then, because it was Patricia, I'm sad, but I'm okay. She nodded. She put her hand on my arm for a moment. We watched the sun finish coming up. The months since then have not been simple. Marcus and I have spoken twice, brief, careful conversations that feel like two people negotiating in a language neither of them is fluent in. Serena hasn't called on Tuesday afternoons anymore. I miss Lily. That's the part I didn't fully calculate, sitting in Beverly's office with my list of things to do. I knew there would be a cost. I didn't know it would have a face. I've started volunteering with the Veterans Housing nonprofit. 2 Saturday mornings a month, I drive to a site in South Phoenix and do whatever they need. Lately, that's been helping with the electrical rough-in on a new build, which I haven't done in 30 years, but apparently you don't entirely forget. The project manager is a 26-year-old named Devin, who has more energy than anyone I've encountered since I was 26. He calls me Mr. Greer. I've told him 3 times to call me Walter. Last Saturday, he called me Mr. Walter. Last Saturday, he called me Mr. Walter, which I've decided to accept as a compromise. The scholarship fund at ASU is already in motion. Beverly's firm handled the setup, and I've been in correspondence with the engineering department. The first recipient will be chosen next spring, a junior year award for a student in civil or structural engineering, preference given to first-generation college students. I get to be on the selection committee if I want. I've started sleeping better. I don't know exactly when it happened, but I woke up one morning last month and realized the ceiling wasn't the first thing I'd stared at for an hour. I'd just slept. The way you sleep when you're not carrying something heavy that belongs to someone else. Helen's chair is still in the living room. I had it reupholstered last spring. Same shape, different fabric, a dark green she would have liked. I sit in it most evenings with whatever I'm reading. The Roadrunner still comes through the wash behind the yard. Lily, the last time I saw her at Christmas, a visit that was brief and somewhat stiff, but that happened, spotted it from the back door and grabbed my arm and said, "Grandpa, look, look, look." It stood there in its improbable way, head moving, completely unbothered by the two of us watching it through the glass. "He comes every few days," I told her. "Does he have a name?" I hadn't named him. I had had him for 3 years and it had never occurred to me to name him. "Not yet," I said. "You can name him if you want." She thought about it for a full 30 seconds, very seriously. Then she said, "Gerald." I have no idea why. I didn't ask. Some things you just accept. So that's what I call him now. Gerald. He was in the wash this morning, actually, when I was having my coffee, standing in the low winter light, doing whatever roadrunners do when they think no one's watching. I watched him for a while. Then I got up, rinsed my cup, and went about my day. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in any grand philosophical way, just the quiet, practical way an engineer thinks about it. Every crack in a foundation started somewhere. Every structural failure had a first moment, usually something small, usually something someone chose to ignore. I ignored a lot of small moments with Marcus. I told myself I was being generous, being patient, being the kind of father who didn't make his son feel judged. But there's a version of patience that's really just avoidance dressed up in nicer clothes, and I was wearing that for a long time. Every time I let a conversation slide, every time I had a conversation that didn't quite hold together, I was making a choice. I was choosing comfort over clarity. And the thing about that choice is that it doesn't stay small. It compounds. Same way debt compounds. Same way deferred maintenance on a structure compounds, quietly, invisibly, until one day you're looking at something that cannot hold its own weight anymore. What changed for me wasn't Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was just where it became visible. What changed was the Thursday I sat in Beverly's office and said everything out loud to someone who had no reason to soften it for me. That's when I understood what I'd been doing. I'd been so afraid of what it would mean, about Marcus, about myself as a father, about Helen's memory, that I kept finding ways to not quite see it. And the cost of that was 2 years of my life spent being slowly maneuvered out of my own decisions. There's something I want to say about intelligence, because I think people confuse it. Being smart didn't protect me from any of this. I have a degree in engineering. I spent 32 years solving complex problems. None of that stopped me from being manipulated by people I loved, because intelligence without honesty is just a better set of tools for lying to yourself. The actual hard thing, the thing that required something more than cleverness, was being willing to look directly at what was happening and call it what it was. That took something different. It took deciding that the truth mattered more than keeping things comfortable, and the will to act on it. That's the third piece, and it's the one nobody talks about enough. Plenty of people can see a problem clearly. Plenty of people understand what needs to be done. But sitting in that office and actually signing those new documents, actually setting up that trust on my terms, actually recording that conversation on Thanksgiving, each of those was a choice to do something hard, when doing nothing would have been so much easier. Inertia is powerful. Grief makes it more powerful. Marcus and Serena were counting on that, whether they knew it consciously or not. I'm not angry anymore. I was, for a while, and I think I was entitled to it. But anger at that temperature has a short shelf life, and what's underneath it, the sadness about who my son became, or maybe who he always was and I never let myself see, that's slower moving. I'm still working through it. What I know is this. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a house I own, with a roadrunner in the wash that Lily named Gerald, and a scholarship that will put a first-generation engineering student through their junior year starting next spring. I volunteer on Saturday mornings with a 26-year-old named Devon who has more energy than should be legal. Helen would have liked that. She always said the point wasn't what you accumulated. The point was what you built that outlasted you. I think I'm finally starting to understand what she meant.